every day that I'm fine. I just gotta win every day of my life. I just gotta win every day of my life. You know every day that I'm putting up a fight. We just gotta win every day of our life. Yeah. We just gotta win every day of our life.
Moderating today's conversation is a two-time NBA champion, Kenny the Jet Smith. Today, one of broadcasting's most renowned basketball analysts. With the leader of a premier global sports and media business, NBA Commissioner Adam Silver. Dedicated to growing basketball worldwide while embracing innovation and new technologies. And from AT&T Communications, CEO John Donovan. Driving the next wave of innovation in how we connect and experience life.
We just gotta win every day of our life.
All right. How's everyone doing? I don't know, Adam, NBA style, we would come out and we'd give everyone high fives.
Hey.
I don't know if we should have done that.
It's not too late.
It's not too late. Yeah. It is too old and too late for us. But before we get into the future, I just want to talk about the present. And Adam, I just wanted you to think about today's fans and how you reach them.
Boy, we reach them every way we possibly can. I mean, some in very traditional ways, through TNT, obviously through your hosting and their distribution, through our other network partners. We do that locally, and then we do that all around the world on networks, virtually in 215 countries now, 40 different languages. But now there's all these new forms of media. It was fascinating. I was watching the last panel and listening to Danny Keene's talking about NextVR. Of course, we're reaching them through virtual reality now. That's still in terms of live streams of games. And increasingly, we're reaching our fans through social media. You're reaching our fans through social media. Last I checked, you had about 1.5 million followers on social media. Yeah, on a good day. But that increasingly, I think, globally, there's something around 1.5 billion people who are connecting with the NBA, its teams, its players, its commentators, its partners through social media. So all those different ways we use to reach fans.
Yeah, and John, what's your perspective from AT&T?
Well, first of all, it's 1.5 million followers get you around town any easier in traffic or get you special parking?
Not at all. No,
especially not in this town.
Not in LA, but in Atlanta, maybe something.
Okay, good. Adam and I were just talking about this backstage. You find that you have to reach people where they are. The expectation you can put something on and make an appointment with them and have them show up on their couch exactly, Thursday at 8 o'clock for an event. That's waning because people want to engage in advance. They want to talk about it afterwards. They want their friends involved in it. And like mobile changed everything. Everything now is at your fingertips. And so, that's affected everything that we do. I'll have to answer questions about games with my kids while I'm driving because they're sitting there on their phones getting informed, right? And then the bottom line for us is that we can't think about how do we traditionally do things. We have to meet them exactly where they are, how they're consuming it, and then we just have to keep trying new things because competitively someone's out there trying to take your lunch off your plate every day.
Well, you talk about new things, Adam, so how do you keep innovating in this market, in this climate with technology, and when the product is already great, how do you even make it better?
Part of the way we innovate is by having great partners like AT&T, frankly, where we know what our core strengths are in terms of producing basketball, but ultimately we're not technologists. But by putting our content out there, by having these kinds of partnerships, Warner Media and AT&T, and then opening the doors to experimentation. And also, to John's point, you have to follow your fans and your consumers and meet them where they are. I think it's pointless to try to resist that, frankly. And whether it's YouTube, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Facebook, we have to find our fans in all those different venues. And then beyond that, I think you need a vision. And again, just coming off that last panel, in terms of what NextVR is doing in virtual reality, part of our goal is try to replicate that incredible courtside experience. I think that's a unique experience in all of sports, to sit courtside in an NBA game, but it's far from scalable, obviously. I mean, even sitting in other parts of the arena doesn't give you that same experience. But technology may provide an opportunity to do that. I mean, virtual reality is one of those ways where it's immersive, where it can be as if you were sitting courtside in a game. In some cases, it's even better than sitting courtside because it can take you onto the floor, it can take you into the locker room, it can take you into the huddle.
Yeah, and you don't have to worry about passes hitting you in your face.
Yeah.
But you know, John, we always hear a lot about 5G and the next generation of wireless. You know, where are we with 5G, and what do we do for teams and fans and sports programmers, and how's that going to be implemented?
Yeah, so, you know, if you think about the genesis of this program, a little over a decade ago, I know it sounds crazy, but before CES show, we would have app developers come because we were trying to get these app stores to get volume and get experiences. And at the time, it was sort of I'll say this lovingly because I'm a recovering electrical engineer, it was kind of a nerd fest. And you had some media there, and it was a couple thousand people. And then what we realized is that this next generation of network is not about applications and a few engineers in a room trying to get some aspect of life onto an application. This is experiences. You need artists, you need creative people, you need people who understand the problems. And so what we did a few years back is we said, let's just take this little thing we used to do in Las Vegas for a couple days and let's open it up to families, kids, developers, creators. And now we have 21,000 people here this weekend. We had to cap the attendance of folks who see this next generation set of experiences and platforms. And you know, Kenny, there's a network has a tendency to be like oxygen. If you get it right, it should be invisible. Like if our network shut down, there'd be people running out of this room not because it was in danger, because they're trying to figure out where's the internet. And I think in 5G, the internet is not only there, it's instantaneous. And that instantaneous network, just a real-time network, changes everything. And there are a lot of experiences around here where people will get a sense of what that means of you can be in the game. And you know, when you think about what Adam just talked about, this experience of maybe moving from courtside. I didn't realize, though, you were going to keep selling those front row seats.
Absolutely.
But to go on the court and have that experience and have it not even look a little iffy.
Right.
That's what this network's going to do.
Well, if my internet shuts down, it's more than oxygen, maybe a little food, water as well. I've been in a lot of trouble. It's a little different for me. But, you know, Adam, we talked about Magic Leaps. They're a real innovator right now, and you're working with them. Could you tell us how that partnership is working?
Sure. I mean, it's another example where we're embracing new technologies and saying use our content for experimentation and to demonstrate what your platform is ultimately capable of doing. And we're also taking a very long view with them. And I know Ronnie Abovitz is going to be up here later, Roni, I'm sorry, talking about Magic Leap. But there's an example of something where the dream is you can actually place anywhere in front of you, in essence called avatars, images of NBA players moving up and down the floor. So it would be as if you could, by virtual reality, recreate the game. I mean, it's beyond even, it's their own technology, so I don't even think it's fair to call it virtual reality, but that you can see the players in 3D moving up and down in front of you. I mean, I think of you on TNT with Kenny's pictures, where you go up to the screen, and in a way, through current technology, that's the closest to it. You in essence, are putting yourself on the court.
Yes.
But that requires a bigger-than-life screen, like the one behind us, and you obviously physically standing up next to it. But think about if you could project that with a simple phone in front of you, you could then start and stop it, see the players in 3D, and then even expand it, and you could walk among them on the floor. That's the kind of thing we're looking at with Magic Leap.
Wow, that's incredible. And John, also you guys obviously have a relationship with Magic Leap as well. And what are the implications there for sports?
Well, when I saw it the first time, we immediately went from saying this is interesting to making an investment. Because you always look when you're going to build a new network, it's always better experienced than described. And so we were getting ready to come into this new era of real-time networks, and Roni had some experience. And coincidentally, the first time I went down, most everything we saw was the NBA, and it was renderings of, players in small form factors that were, like the live game. And then the ability to just move your head and see stats over here, and then look at the schedule by looking that way. And some of these things were, it just said, I'm actually not watching a game, I'm in the game. And it may be, me as a fanatic fan, but it may be me as the analyst, it may be me as the coach. Immediately I thought, it doesn't matter like who gets first, second, third here. There's so much of a different perspective about what has traditionally been viewing a basketball game, that you realize that this is going to be the kind of thing. And so I always talk about you look at where we're going with the future of television, which is experiential. You look at the virtual reality, and then you look at content like the NBA. It felt to me very much like when I first saw the iPhone. And I said, you know what, this changes everything. And the thing that was craziest is when you go back and you look at the original apps on the iPhone 2 that people were downloading. One of them was the Bible. And I thought, it's really interesting because today, 12 years later, you still have 70% of people take spiritual apps with them. So their spirituality can kind of move with them. It's maybe meditation, maybe the Quran, whatever it is. And you said, that's a whole new world. This is what it felt like to me when you look at sports, when you say, it doesn't matter where you are around a sport, whether it's your kid playing or whatever, the game's different. And so we felt like we not only wanted to watch it, we wanted to be inside it. So we made an investment a few years back.
Well, this question is for both of you. We talked about 5G, we talked about AR, we talked about VR, and we talked about all the different. What are some other technologies that are shaping the future that's coming out that we might not know about?
I can start. I mean, when you look at a traditional network today that you carry your phone around in, there'll be thousands of connections per square mile. The next generation of network will enable millions of connections per square mile, and those sensors now can allow you to do things that you can't do in traditional ways. So you take artificial intelligence and machine learning, and all of a sudden, coaches are going to have information that's crazy. You start to put sensors on the uniforms, and then you can virtually be in the game playing. I too can have my shot swatted. When you look at that, it's really interesting because a lot of folks say, are we any better off? Are we getting lazier? Are we any better off when you advance technology? And why is it such a race? Well, the answer is, if good doesn't do it, bad's going to go get it, right? So you got to make sure that the rules get set by the good. So we're going to start to put all these sensors out there. It's going to transform, and we just have to make sure we think about, things like privacy and, how do we make sure that maybe the digitally illiterate today get the programs they need to play not only catch up, but play leapfrog. But I think that, these are the kinds of things, though, that when you change the game, you can also invite new and different players. And that's what makes me really excited, is the thought that you can have creative forces and, energetic young folks like my daughter, who started out by being a painter and then worked her way to do industrial design. And so you don't have to be born digital to take advantage of this. So when you machine learning, artificial intelligence, artificial reality, I think sports is going to become not so much a game of experienced old salts who sit in the fan scouting players. It's going to be a new breed of machines and analytics that augment the judgment of people that say, this is how you put a world-class team together, this is how you win championships. And I know that because I not only watched it, but I proved it to myself with a model.
And for us, part of what we're focused on is we know, and this goes to your question or comment about people still buying those courtside seats, that people still want a communal experience, just like people being here today. I mean, maybe they could have just watched this on their phone, but they choose to come together and experience it with others. And I think for us, as this technology is getting better and potentially enables you to recreate that courtside seat in terms of what they experience on the floor, we also want to look for ways to try to replicate that social experience of watching the game with others, so that when you sit down, you may be alone or just with a few people on a couch somewhere watching or standing on a street corner, but there's no reason that you can't sit down in your regular seat, turn to your right and there's Kenny, turn to your left and there's John, the people that you regularly watch games with, in which you then have that same sense of communication and that others in a community join in. So, you know, whether you want to scream at the officials or cheer for a player or whatever else, it remains all part of the experience. So, because there is that downside, I've talked about it, others have talked about it in terms of social media, that it's something that's intended to be more social, but it often can be isolating. And I think one of the great aspects of sports is whether people have played it, not necessarily at your level, but at any level, and experienced that being on a team, experienced that with others, or experienced as a fan, we don't want to lose that. And I think that we can use technology to continue to bring people together through sports, and I think that's really important.
And Adam, we know how the game has become much more global. Obviously, China and is very popular in other countries. What kind of technology is helping reach other countries and other audiences internationally?
To begin with, it's what John mentioned a moment ago. I mean, I guess iPhone's only roughly 10 years old. It's hard to believe, but digital technology, cell technology, enabling fans anywhere in the world to watch games in essentially high-definition quality video on handheld devices. I mean, that's been the game changer for us, you know, beginning roughly 10, 12 years ago, to the point now where, you know, through our media partners in China, this past season, roughly 600 million people in China will have watched a portion of an NBA game. And I think it works there, you know, East Coast prime time is morning commute, people just arriving at their offices where people can use tablets and phones to watch games. And it's the same notion of that community we talked about as well. So it's not necessarily just people who you would only have access to sitting next to in your hometown or wherever you live, but people globally. If there's a community of Laker fans or Warriors fans or Hawks fans, you name it, they can all come together in a common way. And it crosses over cultures, and it really demonstrates that commonality of sport, even when there's conflicts, you know, among nations. It's sort of the Olympic principles, that people still can have that commonality of enjoying a sports experience together.
Week before last, I was over in Israel, and to that point, I was watching. I wasn't sleeping, so I was getting up. I was watching the game. It started at 3 a.m. But it wasn't that I was up watching the game because I couldn't sleep. It's how seamlessly they wove the local commentators with the analysts who were calling the game. So the game was being called in English, but the minute there was a timeout, they came over and in Hebrew, they were talking about the local analytics, and the commercial times were used.
Well, I was feeding that information, just so you know. I was in the back.
No, I know you have a lot of skills. But let me just take a minute though and tell you, you are one of the most entertaining folks that if I didn't love basketball, I would still watch for what you do.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
No, and the trick with Kenny is entertaining and informative. Because people can be one or the other, and you find a way to make it fun, but yet people come away saying, I just really learned about the game.
Yeah.
And in the way you use technology by standing up there, people come and say, okay, now I'm seeing a game in a way I hadn't seen it before, and that's part of what we're trying to do through technology.
Right.
So to finish the thing, when the game was over, they rolled right into a local basketball game. And so it really was, you know, you think about, if you're a kid watching that, whether you record it, whether you're watching it live, you're seeing the world's best, then you're seeing the local, and now you can actually feel yourself in it. So it's not, an English subtitle kind of experience. There's English, there's Hebrew, it's a local game. It felt local. And I thought, that is really good. I'm going to have to bring that up when I'm on stage with these guys, because it made it feel like basketball could be played in Hebrew, which it's designed to be, right?
Without question, internationally known. I think, you talked about, Adam, the ability to look to your left, look to your right, and be in the community. So in technology, in 20 years from now, what do you see, and what do you think the fan experience is going to be then?
It's obviously such a tough question if we're saying the iPhone is only roughly 10 years old, to try to project out 20 years. At least what I imagine is that, again, what's different about the NBA experience is that there is a true six-man, as you know, as a player, that you don't want to ultimately end up playing in a broadcast studio and losing that connection of a real audience there. And so I imagine we'll still be in arenas playing games. Maybe they'll be advanced in ways I can't think about, but I think people are still going to want to eat during the games, and they still need to go to restrooms, and there's still all those things will still exist. But we do realize that even now, as a global game, less than 1%, in fact, far less than 1% of our fans actually ever set foot in an NBA arena. And so then the question is, for that other 99+%, how can we truly replicate what's so great about that communal experience of attending a game? And I can only imagine in 20 years from now that it won't just be the visual side of it and even the audio, that your other senses will be used as well. You'll be tasting, smelling, feeling the roar of the crowd. I mean, we know in so many arenas, you feel the rumble of the six man. And we know, based on our data, that home court really does matter in the league. It's why teams play for it. And so that's the only thing I can think, that it will be that much more immersive for people who don't have the opportunity to actually sit in an arena.
This is for both of you guys. Community and being active in community is important for the brand, for the partnership, and why is that so important for you guys?
I think that we're in a new time. Internally, I would tell the AT&T employees, look, everything I see on television, I know it's real. Well, most of it's real. But when you see that and you say, we're at a different time and place where the institutions that we've all believed in start to break down. And we can either sit around here and wait till it seeps through our walls, or we can go out in the community, stand up, and show the world what we stand for as a company. We've always been philanthropically generous. We've been generous with our time and volunteerism, and we have what we have. We have stores. We have, we're labor intensive, which means we have a lot of employees. That's the good side of that. And so we started to look at organizations that, I'll say, won the genetic lottery and therefore won the economic lottery, and how did they do it? And the NBA Cares was one of those things that we looked closely at. And so we started a program called AT&T Believes about 18 months ago. And when you look at it at a bigger lens like this, then you start to take on bigger problems. So we went after gun violence in Chicago. And that doesn't sound like the obvious place to start, but we have 5,400 employees in the greater Chicago area. And when you talk to them and say, what about the community? They all say, is there a way that we can somehow help with this gun problem? Because Chicago's not just about gun violence. And so we stretched ourselves, and if you don't mind, I'll give you a little longer version of the answer, because this is really, really important to us as a company. So we opened our stores at night. We took our educational programs that were designed for internal jobs, and we pointed them externally. We make those platforms available to people so that we mentor them and teach them at night in our facilities how they can become entry-level employees in retail and call centers. we opened a call center in Chicago, 500 people, 90% African American, about 70% out of those neighborhoods, south side of Chicago, that are the most violent. We opened stores, we did job fairs. Over half those people, it's the first time ever job. Then we started to learn what it's like to go from not working to working in those neighborhoods. And we learned things like you can't save money, because when you're the first one working, you got 5 or 6 people that said, hey, let's spread this paycheck around. So we started a food pantry program and a backpack where you can come and fill your backpack up every day and take it home, so that at the end of the week you can actually save money and start the flywheel turning. And so we've started to make a difference with those frontline organizations, and we started to look at what we can do. So then we decided, let's go after homelessness in Dallas. We just launched our 20th city, and over the next month, we're going to announce 2 other large corporations that will join us. For those who are here, I really encourage you to look up AT&T Believes. You'll see some of the stories. We took our storytellers and said, look, let's tell these stories, because there's people, in Chicago, not everybody's shooting everybody. It's not all about blood. There's a woman who took her building back. And then there's a woman who took her block back. And there's stories we call beacons of hope. And we shot documentaries. And so it's interesting, because when this program started to spread in Chicago, Jerry Reinsdorf calls. He said, hey, look, NBA cares. We got this going on. We have the players. How can we do this together? And so now we're getting calls from cities and so on. But from an employee perspective, we have nearly 300,000 employees engaged in this program. And great story, there's a little town that we have a call center, only 200 employees, Lebanon, Virginia. And they said, we see how this is going. You do Chicago, LA, New York, and it'll take a long time to get to Lebanon, Virginia, so we're not going to wait. They started without us. And so the program has spread, and it's an important part of what we do. And now every time I meet folks like Adam, where we're doing business deals together, I say, will you take a minute and look at this program and see if there's a way you can help and join us with these problems. And so I'm proud of our employees. I'm proud of how they've stepped up. But I'm really energized about trying to make this program grow, because I think that it's not only an opportunity for a lot of people to engage in things they couldn't otherwise, it's an obligation for organizations like ours that have had so much prosperity to get out and do something.
Kenny, I'll just add, having been involved with the league for a long time, it's been part of the DNA of this league long before us,
Yes.
going back to Bill Russell, Bob Cousy, Oscar Robertson, others, early days of this league, who took it on their shoulders to give directly back, to recognize that they were role models for people in the community. I don't say jumping now, 50 years or so later. I think to John's part, I think for any business operating today, both for your employees and your customers, the other side of creating more engagement and more immersive experiences is that your employees and your customers take you very seriously.
Yeah.
And you have to mean it. And there's an expectation, I think, in any industry. People are looking beyond what the actual product is and want to see what your values are. Particularly young consumers, but I think it's all consumers these days. So it continues to be part of the DNA of this league. And again, like whether it's the current players, whether it's former players, partners of the league, I think in the same approach that AT&T has, it's part of doing business with us. But it's not a negotiation. It's
right.
sort of, I think, we see it as a benefit to being in business with AT&T, and AT&T sees it as a benefit to being in business with the NBA.
And those two things are, any other plans to work together to do anything?
Well, as time progresses, you always, you're going to find the intersection of business and compassion going forward. It's going to be a busy intersection. It's funny, because crazy as this sounds, the Pope wanted to talk to me about this. And what was really interesting is he wanted to talk about the program, but he gave me some business advice. He said, nobody cares what a loser says. You got to go win in business to make sure people are saying, how you doing and what are you doing? Because no one cares when you're not winning. So take advantage when you're on top. These are concrete things. And I thought, that's really interesting. And so that's when I started this idea of, every time, and we're in the middle of a really big deal right now with a very marquee company, not on the content side, on the technology side. And the CEO of that company said, not only am I engaged, I want to get involved, and I want to come down and visit. So we're going to go do a search and rescue program for the homeless down in Dallas. And so it's just now, I think Adam said it really well, it's just part of the conversation. How you're going to do this together in business, you're going to do this with rights, and you're going to do this with technology, and then you say, okay, well, what are you doing in the community, and how do we get that lined up?
I'm not going to try to top the Pope.
Good call. Good call.
You have to have a story about your rabbi.
He's my rabbi.
Well, we have a room full of great developers, great creators. What would your final thoughts and message to them be?
Sure, I'll start. I would just say as much change that has occurred in the almost 30 years that I've been involved in the NBA, it's now happening exponentially faster than it has historically. I'd say now, given the kinds of things that AT&T is doing with 5G, given the kinds of things Magic Leap is doing and all the other technologies that are being presented to us, I don't think you can take anything for granted anymore, and you can't, and I don't think you can accept that change will come sort of at the same evolutionary pace as it has historically. So what I would say to people who are looking at our business, challenge everything. Challenge things that people thought would never change. And even as I was giving my answer about 20 years from now, even as I was saying, well, of course people are going to, I'm hearing myself thinking, who knows, what things will be like, what an arena will look like, whether there'll be a lot more people or many fewer people. So I do think it's incumbent on all of us to sort of every day sort of pay attention to what's happening around you and really challenge everything you're seeing. And I also think work, cross-functionally. One of the things that I pay a lot of attention to, it's what's happening in other industries. I thought, for example, the last panel was fascinating, listening to Shalou talk about the music industry, and thinking, all right, how does that relate to what we do? And I think it's one of the things that you all do so well on Turner is because you're talking about not sort of the NBA in isolation, but how it impacts on a greater society. So that would be my advice.
Yeah. I think the important thing for anybody who's in any walk of life right now is don't opt out. Do not be intimidated and do not opt out. You have to start and opt in. I'll tell you a little story about my daughter went to NYU, she did art. And then she, about a year into her career, said, I hate art. And I said, because when you say wake up and you got to be creative, and you're on the clock, be creative right now. That's not the easiest thing. And so I told her, here's the really good news. Get all your portfolio and put it on, make it digital. Then she said, okay, now it's all digital. I said, okay, now when someone Google searches your name, make sure you get to the top. She had to figure out how to go do all that. And I said, on Tuesday nights, they have these things called meetups. And I look at a lot of apps, and a lot of these apps are junk because they're not creative. Go see how you can help a team make a creative masterpiece. You don't have to write code or be an engineer. And about 3-4 months into this process, she started realizing, I can go work for a tech company like that. And she didn't know any of the language of it, didn't know coding, didn't study engineering. This is not a game that is exclusively the purview of engineers, technologists, and folks like that. So everybody has a story, and every story is a good story. You can be the storyteller. And then you can play on both sides of the camera. You don't need to be tall, dark, and handsome like Kenny. So I just, don't let yourself be convinced that something is precluding you from jumping in. Because once you get in, the tools now make it so much easier, And everybody on this planet has a good story and is interesting. You just got to find your place there.
Well, I would agree with that. And in closing, I'll just add my 1 cent. Being here has been great, and the ability of what I see, and you said about opting in and jumping in, and we talked a little bit in the back. When most people watch a sporting event, a basketball game, they're watching it from a bird's eye view, and they're able to see certain things that everyone's able to see. And we were talking about Paterno, my job is to be an infantry viewpoint. So I could see things and tell you why that person made the decision in 3 seconds. Because I've been part of it, seen it, and happen. And I would say that everyone here is in the infantry. You could see things that we can't see from the bird's eye view. We could see it happening, but it's a different perspective. And that's what I've learned today from you guys, and being here is a different perspective. And if anything else in the future that goes on, that would be my input, is your perspective in 3 seconds or less is different from everyone else's.
So Kenny, your show, do you mind if I flip this around? It's always fun.
Okay.
If you look at your show is, I think Adam said it really well, it's analytic. I feel like I learned something, and entertaining. You always make me laugh. But you guys dabble a little bit in trying to just get latest technology and memes and all that sort of stuff. How do you view this evolution and technology in your line of work right now?
I think it's valuable. Obviously, Shaq is probably the most aggressive in social media. He probably has over, if you put all of his medium forms together, he might have over 100 million people that he can touch in 15 seconds. And for me, we were sitting one night, and I go to the board, and there's a board about this, and I run there, and then I describe the play. But I always felt I was standing in front of a television, and I said, well, you could do that at home. So how can I, and Shaq, myself, and our producer, Tim Kiley, I was like, how can I become part of the game? And I was like, remember the movie Poltergeist when the guy went into the television? It's like, how about if I go in the television and I be part of the game? And so, because I'm always thinking of my 3-second perspective, and now being inside of it, I could give you my 3-second perspective instead of still giving you the bird's eye. So I just want to be part of it more, and giving that perspective. We talked about holograms in the back, and maybe I have LeBron here, and I have, Anthony Davis now here, and I'm like, oh, you guys are so spoiled out here. You get all the best talent in the world every year. But anyway, and I could tell you why in 2 seconds he made the pass to AD and not to LeBron. Because I'm here in the perspective, because I could see the defender, I could see it, and I could see the body shift. So for me, it's just giving that perspective and continuing. So you guys become innovative and tell me how I could do that better, how I can give that 3 seconds better.
That's awesome.
Well, I think this is, I thought I could end it better with the Pope, but I think I ended it well too then.
Yeah,
All right. We want to thank everyone for coming, and this has been a great experience and continue to gain knowledge. And this is having two great people that are leading two great companies and two great brands coming and giving the insight is something that we all, I think, took advantage of and take advantage of. So thank you for having us.
Thank you, Ken.
All right.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. If you are leaving Soundstage 26, please take all your belongings with you. There is no re-entry after leaving the theatre. Thank you.